All right. Here we go again. Let me shut this music down and get things started. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Shoot the Hoot Raw. I'm Chuck from CyberHoot. And today we're talking about something very, very important. And I want to start with a quick question. How many of you have ever opened an email, right? Ever opened that email and read that first sentence and immediately thought, oh, this is the best email I've received all week, maybe all month, maybe all year. And then 5 sentences later, reality shows up. We've all been there. Whether it was a free package delivery, a fake invoice, or a fake refund or a fake prize, or that magical moment when someone promises free food in the office and it turns out they're just talking about celery. Ugh, hate celery, right? Today we're going to talk about something much bigger, much bigger than phishing and even celery. We're going to talk about people. Because cybersecurity isn't really a technology problem. It isn't. It's a human problem. It's about trust. It's about motivation. It's about culture. And most importantly, it's about how we help people improve. Because here's something I've learned after years and years in this industry. I won't talk about age, years in this industry. Most people aren't trying to make bad security decisions. Most people aren't careless. Most people aren't lazy. But most people are busy. They're trying to do their jobs. They're helping customers. They're answering emails. They're juggling meetings. And occasionally, they're hoping for a little bit of good news, right? Which turns out to be important for today's episode because sometimes the biggest lesson in cybersecurity isn't found in who clicked. It's found in what happens afterwards. Do people actually learn? Do they improve? Do people trust the process? Or do they simply learn to fear it? That's the conversation we're going to have today. Because cybersecurity isn't about catching people at their worst. Nope. It's about helping people become better, right? Helping them to learn better. So grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab whatever keeps you awake during compliance trainings, and let's shoot the hoot. All right. Let's take a look at today's flight plan. Today we're going to spend a little time talking about something that's often overlooked in cybersecurity, not technology, not hackers, not AI, people. First up, our 5-minute wrap. You get tomorrow off, or do you? We're going to explore what happens when cybersecurity training programs focus on catching people instead of helping them improve, and why one simple phrase can completely change how employees view security awareness. Then it's time for our CyberHoot Nerd Update. We've got smarter phishing and better visibility. We've got improvements to our attack fish, new reporting visibility. We have IP exclusion capabilities, and a few platform enhancements designed to make life easier for administrators. Because cybersecurity, it's hard enough. Listen, it's hard enough. Your reporting shouldn't be, right? After that, our open mic Q&A. Can positive reinforcement actually work? We're tackling some of the biggest questions around positive security culture. Things like, should employees be punished? Do realistic phishing tests go too far? And what's the difference between accountability and embarrassment? And yes, there's a difference, a huge one. And finally, our Hootworthy horror story. June holiday, the day off that never existed. It's hot off the presses, a real world story that sparked headlines, controversy, and a conversation every security professional should hear. Because sometimes the most important lesson from a phishing test has nothing to do with who clicked, and everything to do with what happened afterwards. So buckle up. Today we're talking culture, leadership, learning, and why the most powerful phrase of cybersecurity might not be gotcha. It might be, hey, nice catch. Let's start with this. So let's move this on. Let's start with a very simple question. Have you ever been publicly embarrassed? I remember a pretty embarrassing story where I got pantsed in art class in 10th grade by my sister. But back to the story. Have you ever been publicly embarrassed and thought to yourself, wow, this is exactly the motivation I needed to become a better person? Probably not, right? Probably not. Nobody has ever walked out of a meeting thinking, that public humiliation was truly transformative. Yet somehow, a lot of security awareness programs still operate that way. Someone clicks, someone fails, someone gets called out, someone ends up on a report. And then everyone stands around wondering, why don't employees love cybersecurity training? Who knows? It's a mystery, right? Right up there with why printers hate us or why conference coffee tastes like regret. Blah. Here's the reality. People learn better, newsflash here, when they aren't embarrassed. In fact, behavioral science has been teaching us this for decades, right? Positive reinforcement tends to create stronger long-term behavior change, more so than punishment does alone. Think about sports. The best coaches don't spend practice yelling, Wrong, 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 still wrong. They're not doing that. No one wins a championship because their coach had a really impressive collection of insults. Not at all. Great coaches do something different. They reinforce good habits. They celebrate progress. They recognize effort. And they build confidence. Because people naturally move toward things that feel rewarding and away from those things that feel kind of painful, right? Imagine burning your finger. What do? You move away. Boom, real fast, right? Cybersecurity is no different. When employees feel like they've been embarrassed, tricked, shamed, or singled out, guess what, folks? They don't become more engaged. They become more defensive. And that's where we need to separate two very, very, very different ideas. One is compliance, and the other, culture. Compliant asked, did they complete the training? Culture asked, do they actually care? Those are very, very different questions because a person can complete training while simultaneously rolling their eyes the same time, the entire time. So let's be honest. We've all sat through training like that, haven't we? What we really want is something bigger. We want people to feel comfortable asking questions, reporting suspicious emails, admitting mistakes, learning without fear. Because here's the secret. Every security professional already knows something. Somebody is eventually going to click. It's going to happen. We're humans. We click things. Sometimes we even click reply all. Ouch, hate that, right? The goal isn't perfection. The goal is creating an environment where somebody says, hey, I think I clicked something weird before the bad guys actually discover it. Because that person, they didn't fail. Not at all. That's the exact behavior we want, right? And that's the difference between a culture built on fear and a culture built on trust. People don't build trust because they're afraid. No, no. They build trust because they feel safe enough to learn. And that's where our great security begins, right? That's where great security culture gets started. So if embarrassment isn't the answer, what should we actually be rewarding? Let's talk about it. Now, let's talk about something most security programs never stop to ask. What are we actually rewarding? Because every organization rewards something. Whether you realize it or not, you're rewarding them something. Let's say an employee reports a suspicious email. What happens next? Do they get thanked? Do they get recognized? Do they get feedback? How about that pat on the back? Hey, you did good. Or do they get silence? Because here's the funny thing. If I train my dog and every time he does the right thing, I give him a treat, he figures it out pretty quickly. And guess what? Humans aren't all that different. We're just a little bit more expensive to feed. That's all. People repeat what gets rewarded, excuse me. People repeat what gets rewarded. And yet, many security programs spend almost all their time measuring failures and clicks, mistakes, and violations. Oh my. Imagine if a football coach only tracked fumbles every week, every meeting, every report. Good news, everybody. We had fewer fumbles this week. Nobody's excited about that. Instead, great teams celebrate wins, and security teams should do that too. What if we tracked suspicious emails reported, phishing attempts stopped, employees helping coworkers, security improvements suggested? What if we celebrated those, right? Because here's the truth. Most employees aren't trying to be cybersecurity problems. They're not. They just want to do the right thing. They just need the reinforcement when they do. In fact, some organizations have discovered something surprising. Employees become dramatically more engaged when reporting suspicious emails is viewed as a win. Instead of merely avoiding a failure, that's a completely different mindset. One says, don't mess up, right? The other says, nice catch, let's go. And guess which one people enjoy hearing most? It's not exactly a trick question, I know. This is why positive reinforcement works, because we're not trying to create fearful employees. We're trying to create confident employees, people who feel good about participating, people who feel comfortable speaking up, people who see cybersecurity as something they contribute to, not something that's done to them. And when that happens, something amazing occurs. Security stops being an IT initiative and it starts becoming part of your culture. Culture, culture, culture. Incredibly important. Let's be honest. If you're only recognizing, if your only recognition at work comes from clicking the wrong thing, you might start avoiding security altogether, right? And that's not awareness, that's survival and not good. Culture grows where attention goes. So if you only reward failure avoidance, you get compliance. If you reward positive behavior, you get engagement. And engagement is where we really want, that's that real cybersecurity culture. That's where it begins. So if we want people engaged and not just compliant, what should security training actually feel like? Let's see. Okay, let's talk about coaches and what cybersecurity training should feel like. So I'm not talking about cybersecurity coaches though, right? So let's just take that off the plate. We're talking about real coaches. Think about the best coach you ever had. Could have been in sports, in music, in school, work, or life. Now think about what made them so great. Was it because they screamed every time you made a mistake? Doubtful. Probably not. Imagine a basketball coach watching a player miss a shot. The player misses. The coach runs out into the court yelling, "That's it, you missed. We're putting it in a report." Dumb. Just dumb. Nobody improves that way. The best coaches do something different. They acknowledge mistakes, but they focus on improvement. They focus on growth. They focus on the next play. Because coaching isn't about punishment. It's about progress. And honestly, security awareness should work the same way. The goal isn't to create those employees who are afraid to click. Not at all. The goal is man, tongue-tied. The goal is to create employees who are getting better, a little better every month, a little more aware, a little more confident, a little more engaged. That's one of the reasons we built things like Hoot ranks, those cybersecurity scores, because people love seeing progress, not perfection, but progress. I mean, think about it. Think about this for a second. We as people, what do we track? We track steps. We track workouts. We track golf scores. We track video game levels. We track fantasy football standings. Some people track how many hours they sleep and then spend all day talking about it. Guilty. I do that a little bit, probably too much. Anyway, humans are wired for progress. We like leveling up. We like achievement. We like seeing improvement. That's what gamification is supposed to do. Not manipulate people. It's supposed to motivate them. There's a huge, huge difference between those two things. Good gamification says, look how far you've come. Bad security culture says, look what you did wrong. Which one sounds more fun? Again, it's not exactly a trick question. Here's something important. Positive reinforcement doesn't mean we ignore mistakes. Nope, that's a common misconception. Good coaches absolutely correct mistakes. You got to correct them. They don't define people by them. They don't define their people by them. That's the difference. A missed shot, it's not a bad player, right? A clicked phishing email isn't a bad employee. It's a learning opportunity. And when people feel supported, they improve faster, they participate more, they report more, they engage more, and ultimately, they become stronger security allies. Research in workspace engagement consistently shows that recognition and positive feedback increase participation, motivation, and long-term behavioral improvement. Okay, I felt like a science stat there. So, in short, if yelling created experts, every youth soccer parent would be coaching in the World Cup today. It's not happening. Thankfully, that's not how humans work. The best coaches don't scream after every mistake. They help people get better after every mistake. That's the culture we're trying to build. That's what we're trying to do here at ShootTheHoot. So if coaching builds stronger security habits, how do you know whether your culture is actually working? Let's put it to the test. Let's finish with what I think is the most important question for today's episode. How do you know if your security culture is actually working? Because it's easy to measure clicks, simple enough. It's easy to measure failures. It's easy to count who clicked what. But culture's a little trickier. So here's my test. Ask yourself 3 questions, right? First, are people afraid to report if they did something bad? Think about that. If an employee clicks something suspicious, what happens next? Do they immediately tell somebody? Do they spend 30 minutes hoping nobody notices? Because those are very, very different cultures, right? In a healthy culture, people report quickly. But in a fear-based culture, people hide mistakes. And hidden mistakes, they become incidents, right? So, second question. Question number 2. Are people afraid to fail? Not because they want to fail. Nobody wakes up thinking, today's the day I clicked on something really, really dangerous and mess up a lot of people's day. No, that's not how people think. It's not how they work. But if employees are terrified of making a mistake, they often stop participating altogether. Engagement goes down. They stop asking questions. They stop speaking up. They stop engaging. And that's exactly the opposite of what we want, right? Third question. Are people actually learning? Not just completing the training. Look, you can complete a training and not learn. I'm talking about learning. There's a difference. Can they spot suspicious emails more often? Are they asking better questions? Are they reporting more concerns? Are they becoming more confident? Because that's what real progress looks like. And this brings us back to the story that inspired this entire episode today. If your phishing test creates anger, frustration, resentment, or distrust, instead of the learning, the discussion, the awareness, the improvement, then I think it's fair to ask a difficult question. Did your test really succeed? Did the test really go through properly the way you wanted? Did it work out the way you wanted? Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. The campaign might have produced numbers. You might do a phishing test that creates and produces numbers. The report might look fantastic. The click rate might tell a big story, right? But culture tells a story too. And culture usually sticks around a lot longer than a report does. Because at the end of the day, security isn't a technology problem. It's a people problem. And people perform best when they feel trusted, supported, encouraged, and in an environment where they feel safe to learn. Not safe to fail, safe to learn. That's a very, very important distinction. If your employees see an email from the security team and immediately panic, you may have accidentally trained them on the wrong thing. The phishing test doesn't tell you what your culture is. No, the reaction to the phishing test does. And that's the test that really matters, right? All right. So let's switch gears now and hop into today's nerd update. Little change here. Let's go. Boom. All right. This week, we've been focused on making things smarter, cleaner, and easier to manage. So let's start with attack fish. We've made several improvements there. First, the default phishing language page, that phishing landing page, now accepts either a username or an email address as input, which sounds pretty simple, and it is, right? But it creates a more realistic experience, and realistic training creates better learning. We also updated the You've Been Fished page. It now automatically displays your organization's configured logo, because if employees are going to learn something, they might as well learn it from a page that actually looks like it belongs to your organization, not some generic training screen from the internet, right? Now, next, and this one is a big one for a lot of our MSPs and administrators, we've added a new attack fish IP exclusion list. This allows you to exclude specific source IP addresses and networks from phishing activity tracking. Why is this important? Why? Because sometimes your security scanner, your mail filter, or even your network infrastructure is a little bit more enthusiastic than your users. And that creates noise in our reporting. Now you can filter that out, which means cleaner metrics. And cleaner metrics lead to better decisions. On the security side, we're always working, right? We implemented tighter security controls across the platform. We've also updated our underlying architecture to improve our IP logging and visibility. So not that really flash kind of update on that part of it, but definitely the kind that makes security people feel a little happy, right? You just hearing we did some security stuff just makes you feel better. And finally, a little autopilot cleanup. We've updated the next action menu and the cleaner drop-down experience. So we had that drop-down, we had that next actions over on the right, and then when we did the redesign, we put as a little green button over here that you would hover over it would slide out. Well, it confused a lot of people. I thought it was a good design thing. That was on me. That was my design. Sorry. It just didn't work out. People were having some issues. They didn't know where the button was. They didn't see it. So what we did instead was we made the button more prominent. We made it a clear button at the top right-hand side of the string. You can find it there. This makes it more intuitive, gives you a cleaner workflow, and there's less hunting around, which is one of our favorite categories of improvement, right? Because every second we can save you as an administrator, another second that you can spend doing literally anything else. And that's this week's nerd update. That's what we got done this week. We got smarter phishing simulations. We got better visibility, cleaner reporting, and a few quality of life improvements that should make the platform a little smoother for everyone. So, all right. Enough about what we've been building. Let's talk about one of the biggest questions in cybersecurity awareness today. Can positive reinforcement actually work? But first, here we go. First, we gotta show the banner. Oh no, it didn't save my banner update earlier. That's not good. It's gonna mess up my questions too, I suspect. So let me change this real fast. That's a mistake. I fixed this earlier and didn't work. That's not good. So pause. Save. Show. All right. Send day off 10 to ShootTheHoot@cyber.com and receive 10% off your next invoice. Type it in, click send, and get that 10. If you're not watching live, no worries. Email us anyway. I may just give you the 10% off. I'm a nice guy like that. The only catch is you're limited to one of these discounts per month. All right. I just feel like my questions are going to be off too, so you're going to have to forgive me here if my questions are off, and I think they're going to be. And they are off. Okay. I'm going to try to say the questions out loud. All right. So it's time for our open mic. Right? And today we're tackling one of the biggest misconceptions in security awareness training, right? Because every time we talked about positive reinforcement, someone always asked, that sounds nice, but does it actually work to be positive? Fair question. Let's talk about it. So question one, I'm going to grab this and throw it in. I'll update it real fast, so I can be pretty fast at this, I think. Boom, boom, boom. Save and show. Let's go. If people aren't punished, won't they keep clicking? Short answer, no. No, because that's not how learning works. Think about how you learn to drive. Nobody taught you by waiting for you to hit a mailbox, right? My sons hit the mailbox. Most people improve through feedback, coaching, repetition, experience. The same thing applies to cybersecurity. So let's be clear. Positive reinforcement doesn't mean whatever you want. No, 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 no. That's not training. That's chaos, right? People still need accountability. They still need education. They still need feedback. The difference, we're trying to improve behavior, not punish humans. And the data is pretty clear. Organizations with strong security cultures generally see better participation and more reporting and more engagement than organizations relying primarily on fear. So, boom, let's train, let's not punish. All right, next question here. Boom, boom. I'm updating on the fly. That's not right. There we go. Boom. Save and show. My next question I have here, should phishing tests ever trick employees? So this one's interesting, right? Because phishing tests, phishing attacks, they're deceptive by nature. So training needs some realism. That testing needs realism. The question isn't whether a test should be believable. The question is, what's the goal? If the goal is learning, great. If the goal is generating a report, maybe. If a goal is humiliating employees, we've probably lost the whole plot here, right? So remember, a phishing test should teach, not create resentment. And honestly, the more emotionally manipulative the test becomes, the more likely it is to create frustration instead of awareness. That's exactly why we're having today's conversation. Phishing tests are great with the appropriate coaching, context, and I like to recommend a little heads up. So here's how. In our platform, underneath our attack fish settings, you can go in and send an email to the managers and the administrators a week or so before the phishing test starts. That way, we can send an email out to the employees saying, hey, we're going to be doing a fish test in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're not trying to trick anybody. We're just trying to see how effective our training is. See if you can report see if you can spot and report that fish. Good luck. Big difference, right? Big difference. Okay. Last question I have pre-canned for us here. I always have canned questions. You guys know that. And then I can see if we have any other questions. All right. What's the difference between accountability and embarrassment? Okay. So this might be the most important question of the day. So accountability says we made a mistake. Let's learn from it. Here's how we improve. Embarrassment says, come here, everybody come look at Dave. He messed up again, right? Accountability focuses on behavior. Embarrassment focuses on the person. And great cultures always separate the two because mistakes are opportunities for learning. They're not identities. So let's be honest. If embarrassment was the best teaching tool out there, every middle school parent would graduate as a cybersecurity expert. We all know that's not how that works. So the goal of security awareness isn't to create employees who are afraid, it's to create employees who are engaged. Because employees who engage more report more, they learn more, they participate more, and ultimately they protect the organization more. All right, let's see if we have any questions. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, boom, boom, boom. All right, thanks for the feedback, Alex. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, let's keep it moving. We'll turn this off here. Next one. Boom. All right. So speaking of phishing tests, we've created a lot more than just awareness here, right? Let's talk about one of these stories that inspired the entire episode. This is the day thousands of employees were told, "Congratulations, you get a day off," or so they thought. So this when I saw this come across, this came across the other day on Reddit, and I saw this story. I'm like, there's our episode. We got to do an episode to talk about this. So we're going to finish today's episode with a story that it perfectly captures what we've been talking about and kind of inspired the whole thing. This story starts with a very, very, very simple email. The subject line was simple: June holiday. Nothing suspicious, nothing urgent, nothing scary, just June holiday. The email was sent to healthcare employees, and it thanked them for all their hard work. It acknowledged their long hours, their dedication, their sacrifices, and it delivered some very welcome news. Employees should be receiving an additional paid day off. Awesome. Employees will be receiving an additional paid day off. That sounds great. Now, let's be honest. If you ever worked in healthcare or education or IT, or honestly, if you ever just worked anywhere, that sounds pretty damn good, right? So people got excited. People started making plans. People started thinking about sleeping in, spending time with family, getting outside, taking a break. And for a brief moment, employees believed the organization was saying, thank you. You earned this. Then came the reveal. You see, these employees have been working for the healthcare, and they've been busting their tails working with a new software system, delivering the service, learning the new system. It was very, very overwhelming. But they sent this phishing out. Hey, everyone's did a day off, right? But it came the reveal. The day off, it wasn't real. It was just an email. It was just a phishing simulation training, right? Testing, phishing simulation test. Now, Here's where the story gets interesting. Essentially, the phishing test worked. People clicked it, data was collected, metrics were generated, the report likely showed exactly what the security team wanted to measure. Mission accomplished. Or was it? Because what happened next became the real story. Employees were upset. Union leaders publicly criticized the exercise. The story made headlines, and eventually the organization apologized and announced it would review how future simulations would be developed. And that's why I wanted to share this story, but not because people clicked, because honestly, most humans probably would have. The interesting part isn't the click. The interesting part is the reaction, because this story forces us to look at it and to look and ask a bigger question. What are we trying to build? Compliance or culture? Because those aren't always the same thing. Simulation successfully measured susceptibility, but many would argue it simultaneously damaged trust. If employees walked away feeling frustrated, embarrassed, manipulated, and resentful, maybe we should ask, what lesson did they actually learn? Because the lesson may not have been, watch out for phishing emails. Lesson may have been, don't trust emails from leadership or IT. And that's a very different outcome. Now, don't misunderstand me. Phishing simulations absolutely matter. We use them. We believe in them. They're important. But the goal should always be learning, not humiliation. We want improvement, not gotchas. Because security culture isn't built when someone clicks. It's built in what happens next. And that's the difference between catching people and helping people. Let's be honest. If somebody offered me a surprise day off, I'd probably read the email twice. Then I'd forward it to my wife before they had a chance to take it back, right? Boom. But not in this case. The most important metric in a phishing simulation isn't who clicked. It's whether people trust you more or less after the lesson is over. And that's a cultural test that really, really matters. So what can we learn from all of this? Let's bring it all home. Today we talked about phishing test. We talked about culture. We talked about coaching. And we talked about a simple email that promised something everybody really wanted, a day off. But underneath that story was a much bigger question. What are we actually trying to accomplish? Are we trying to catch people or are we trying to help people? Because those are not the same thing. For years, security awareness has often been measured by who clicked on what, who failed, who made the mistake. But great culture, great security cultures measure something different. They measure who reported, who improved, who participated, who helped protect others. Because cybersecurity isn't about creating perfect employees. It's not going to happen. Good luck with that, right? We're humans. We click things. We make mistakes. We trust people. And occasionally, just occasionally, we get excited about surprise days off. I mean, we do. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. The goal is creating an environment where people feel comfortable saying, hey, I think something looks a little bit suspicious here. Or I may have clicked something. Or can somebody help me understand this? I'm a little bit lost. Because those moments right there, those moments, that's where real security happens, right? Not in the report, not in the click rate, not in the spreadsheet, in the conversation, in the learning, in the culture. Culture, culture, culture. I'm going to say it over and over and over again. Because cybersecurity isn't about catching people at their worst. No, it's about helping people become better every day. One lesson, one report, one suspicious email at a time. Because culture isn't built by saying, gotcha. It's built by saying, nice catch, good one. And when organizations make that shift, something amazing happens. Security stops feeling like enforcement and starts feeling like teamwork. So that's a culture we're trying to build here at CyberRoot. We want to help you build your culture. That's how we're different. That's how we're helping you. So thanks for joining us today for another episode of Shoot the Hoot Raw. Until next time, I want you to laugh, learn, and hoot up. Hoot up!